RMJ Movie Reviews back again. And I'm coming with another happy holidays Halloween movie review. So I decided to, like I said, I'm trying to switch it up and do something different. But, I'm going to throw in the traditional ones here and there. I consider this a traditional one. Stephen King's Pet Sematary. Now, what I'm showing you right here is a DVD double pack I just bought from Walmart. It was $5 for 1 and 2. I'm actually going to review Pet Sematary 2 tomorrow night, but in the meantime, we're going to talk about Pet Sematary 1 with this very generic cover art. Why they didn't use the original one, I will never know. When they use the original one for part 2, whatever. But in the meantime, I'm doing a movie review of Stephen King's Pet Sematary, directed by Mary Lambert from 1989, starring Dale Midkiff, I think is how you pronounce his name, Denise Crosby, and from the Monsters, Fred Gwynn. Yeah, I had a brain fart there. Pet Sematary. This is one of my horror movie I remember from my childhood. Scared the living crap out of me. I saw this when it first came on video. I don't know if it came on video in 1990. I think maybe that was when it came on video. But either way, I believe I was 9 years old when I first saw this film. And to give you some context, my father had rented it from the video store. And I remember he had already watched it. And then he was like, well, Mon, I know you like horror movies, so you can watch it. So I watched it in the basement by myself. Lights on, I might add. But at the time, my parents lived in this house where, it was a fully finished basement, kind of like this here. But what happens is, at night, the furnace would make this weird noise where when it was like resetting or whatever, the furnace would go like this. Boom! And it would make this loud boom noise. Now, keep in mind, watching Pet Sematary probably at about 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday night, while the furnace is going boom, and the furnace was behind me while the TV was here. So that gives you a little context of how I saw this film for the first time. And I just remember every time the furnace made that noise, boom, I would go like this. And I was getting chills all over my skin because the movie scared me to death. I have not sat and actually watched this movie from beginning to end in years. Most of these movies I review now, I've seen them in pieces, and I watch the best parts and all of that, which is what filmmakers typically do. But it is the first time in many years that I watched it from beginning to end. And you know what? I'm surprised that I looked at some retro reviews for the film from when it was released. It got like some negative reviews, and then it got like some medium reviews. For me, watching the film again now, I think the film holds up. I actually think it's a very well done horror story. And I never read any of Stephen King's books ever. I've only seen most of his movies, the regular movies, TV movies, straight to DVD, straight to video, cable movies. I've seen most of them. But I think the movie is very well done, and I think people who criticize it, I think it's just being unfair. I think those are people who just really ghettoize any horror film or horror story. There's a lot of people, I'm going to do a separate video about that, but there's a lot of people that really hate on horror movies just for no reason. You know what I mean? But this is my new quote now, people. When I find people that hate on action movies or horror movies, my new quote is, why don't you just go watch The Bridges of Madison County? I think that was the movie with Clint Eastwood and Meryl Streep laughing at the kitchen table. You go watch that, okay? But I digressed. I think the film holds up. I think it's very well done. And another thing is, for people who are seeing this movie now, you have to remember, this was 1989. So, a little bit of 80s cheese with the special effects is in there. Some of the acting is a little bit hammy, some of it, but overall, throughout the entire movie, it's pretty consistent and the performances are strong. The hamminess is only sprinkled throughout just because of the decade it was made. And also, too, this was at a time when, this was before The Shawshank Redemption, this was before The Mist, this was before The Green Mile. So horror films weren't handled with care like they are now, or horror stories. I mean, yes, Stand By Me had came out a couple years before in '86. That wasn't really a horror story though. That was a King story. But regardless, if Pet Sematary were made now, it'd probably be, if you got it in the right director's hands, it'd probably be handled with a little bit more care, a little bit more intimacy. But I will say, I being the movie that it is right now, I still think it holds up. And I think for the time period, I think it had a very good balance of just the grief of losing your child and kind of the 80s tropes of slasher horror, which they had to mix that in there. They just had to, because it was the 80s. They probably filmed it in 1988. I think they said that on the special features. But either way, everybody knows Pet Sematary. It basically tells the story of the Creeds. They've just moved into this new house in this new town right by this haunted Indian burial ground in Pet Sematary, right? And they lose their kid. Well, first they lose the cat, the family cat. Then they lose the kid, and this burial ground that brings dead back to living. But when they come back, they're not quite how they left when they were human beings. And, what hits the fan, and fun ensues. Fun would be a strong word for the content in this movie. But I really have always liked this film. And I still very much like it now. What I most like about the movie is how, like I said, I feel like the characters are handled with care in this movie. I see a lot of people on the internet hate on Dale, the star Dale Midkiff. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing his name wrong. Dale. They don't even have it in the credits on here. Never mind. Dale Midkiff. I'll just call him Midkiff, no matter if I'm wrong. But I think his performance is very good. I think it's a very good performance. The guy worked with what he had to work with. Denise Crosby from Star Trek: The Next Generation. She's very good in this movie too. Fred Gwynn is fantastic. He's the anchor here. Because he's like the big... I didn't realize, outside of the monsters, I didn't realize he was like a stage singing Broadway actor and all that kind of stuff. But he's firing on all cylinders here. He sells the entire thing. Just like when I talked about Sleepwalkers, the mom Sleepwalker character was the anchor of that movie. Fred Gwynn, I noticed the bad guys in these are kind of the anchor. And I would consider, upon rewatching it again, I would consider Fred Gwynn's character... Because, you could say he's neutral, but in watching it now, I would call him a bad guy. Or at least he's kind of, as the director Mary Lambert describes it in the commentary, he's an evil angel. So kind of like you got the good angel, the bad angel. He's more of a bad angel who's kind of, because like in all Stephen King's, like It and like Stand By Me, these towns kind of have a certain level of evil themselves. So it's like he is like the promoter of the evil. He's pushing the evil. He's calculating. It's kind of ambiguous in the movie, but upon rewatching it, he's calculated in how he's pushing. He's pushing Louis Creed to do these evil things. He tells him about the Pet Sematary. Then he weaves it to the Indian burial ground. He's calculating this whole thing. He says, keep the cat away from the road or the cat's going to die. Then the cat died. Don't bury your kid there because if it comes back, he'll be evil. Then he buries the kid there. He wasn't even on his mind until he put it there. So, and then Pascal, who, Louis Creed was I believe, I don't know if he's a resident or he's a medical doctor. He's somewhere in that range. But I think he's still in school, so I think he's a resident, but doctor. But either way, he tries to save this kid who got hit by a truck. He dies, so he's the good angel because he tried to do a good deed and help him. He comes back and tries to help his family. We all know the movie doesn't do much good, but hey, he gives it a shot, right? So in retrospect, I would say I think Judd Crandall is a bad guy. I will say that, and that's my opinion of the material. But, obviously I'm 35 now, so the movie doesn't scare me anymore like it used to. But I will say the standout moments, and I think everybody who saw this film from when they were my age, little kids to teenagers, whoever saw the film when it came out and were old enough to remember it and process it, the scenes that are scary still are scary. which would be God, what's the sister's name? Man, I'm having a brain fart. I'm so tired from work. Zelda. Zelda is still absolutely terrifying. Still terrifying. And I remember that scene scared the hell out of me. I remember watching the movie. The story about little Timmy who died in World War II, and he comes back to mommy and daddy's house. Basically, he kills daddy. They don't ever say what happened to mommy. I don't know, but they burn the house down. The boys don't seem like they're too anxious to actually go into the house with little old dead Timmy who's back from the grave, terrorizing his mother and father. But little Timmy pulls his dad into the kitchen while the house burns down. Nice favor for bringing him back from the dead, right? And I try to think the last scene that I really think is really scary is God, what's it? Those might be the two big ones that I can think of right off. It's Zelda and the little Timmy story. I think those are the ones that really chilled me. There were some other things in it that were kind of creepy. Some of the stuff with Pascal, even though he becomes a humorous, comical character, but when he first is introduced, I always thought that was kind of creepy. And Dale Midkiff's reaction when he spits the blood on his face and he kind of goes like this and he goes, "A man's heart is stony," or whatever the line is. I just love Dale Midkiff. How did you know? I mean, I love those scenes, man. And I love the scene where, like, Fred Gwynn is talking to Dale Midkiff and he goes, "Lois, the heart of a man's soul is stonier." And I just love how Dale Midkiff gets this look in the eyes. He goes, "What did we do, Judd? What did we do?" And it's good stuff, man. It's just fun horror. But, this is a very creepy, unsettling movie. The material watching it now is very heavy. When the kid gets hit by the truck, I noticed watching the film now, I don't have any children, but I will say it rattled me a little bit seeing that baby get hit by the truck and, they're arguing and fighting with the parents at the funeral, which I will say the parents' characters, the in-laws of Louis Creed are a little bit hokey, but I will say the funeral scene is pretty heavy. It's played pretty real, even though there's a little bit of overacting there, but I still love Dale Midkiff. And who can forget when little Gage gets hit by the truck and when Dale Midkiff lets out that no in slow motion, that is the most gut. Oh man, you just feel that to your core, man. I think that's outstanding. That scream, that sells the entire movie. But I will say, I think that the death in this movie is handled intimately and with care, and that's my opinion. I've heard some people talk about the slasher elements when Gage comes back and he's got the scalpel and all of that. Look, this is an uncomfortable subject matter, and look, it was the 80s. They were going to push the envelope like that. And plus the fact you got to sell tickets, you got to bring people in. So you got to push the boundaries. It's a horror picture. It's uncomfortable subject matter. So it is what it is. I think maybe the thing with showing the kid on fire and the needle to the neck, questionable, but it had to push the boundaries. So, hey, I'm all about pushing the boundaries in filmmaking, so I was okay with it. This is a tight, solid horror movie, What I didn't realize in retrospect, in rewatching it again, is I didn't realize that Gage doesn't even come back from the dead till almost an hour into the movie. So he really only wreaks havoc for really 20 minutes of the movie. I always remembered Gage being back for a longer period of the movie, but he's not back that long. It's really kind of most of the movie is build up. Really the stories that they tell are really chilling. Of course, Zelda and the little Timmy story. And when Fred Gwynn is telling that story about little Timmy and just that ice, he's got these blue eyes and he sells the hell out that scene, man. It's fantastic acting and how he can really... Fred Gwynn can really play it like he's being sympathetic, but there's a sinister motive behind it when he's telling them the info. It's very, you see this little sinister look in his eyes. Very well done. And, it's not very clear. I think he's a bad guy, but again, it's very ambiguous as to whether he's being sinister in his actions or whether it's just that this town or this pet cemetery or this Indian burial ground is just so evil that it pushes the weak to do evil things or whatever. You know, I'm stretching a little bit, but maybe that's what it is. But I think this is a fantastic, solid horror movie. All you haters can screw off. I don't care. Oh, and not to mention Stephen King. There's a book, guys, that I just saw at buybacks bookstores. A recent book was Stephen King, and he talks about like all his adaptations to TV or to movies. He talks about Pet Sematary. I'm not going to digress too far, but King's, from what I read in that book, I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing. I meant to go back and buy it. But either way, King, it seems like he's okay with this movie. He doesn't sound like he thinks it's the greatest, but he thought, in comparison to Silver Bullet and Maximum Overdrive and some other ones, he thought this was okay. He talked a little bit about it, too. You know, I'll talk about that later. But either way, he seems to be okay with this movie. By all accounts, the sequel... Stephen King never wrote a sequel in the book, didn't have anything to do with the sequel movie. I think that the sequel movie was just strictly Paramount trying to milk the Pet Sematary name. But in all accounts, I think Stephen King did see Pet Sematary 2, and I think he hated it. But whatever, I'm going to review Pet Sematary 2 tomorrow. But hey, I love this movie. If I had to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give Pet Sematary a solid 8 out of 10. You know, it loses points for some of the hammy acting. Loses a little bit of points for just kind of a little bit of the 80s cheese. Just a little bit of the 80s cheese, you know. So it loses a little bit of points for that. But overall, I think it's a very creepy, disturbing, intimately made horror picture. So those are my thoughts on Stephen King's Pet Sematary. Thumbs up the video. Subscribe to the channel. Share the video. And leave comments down below about Stephen King's Pet Sematary. If you liked it, if you hated it, how were you when you saw it? Did you see it when it first came on video? Did you see it at the theater? Whatever. Tomorrow night I'm going to be reviewing Pet Sematary 2. Starring Mr. Terminator 2 himself, Edward Furlong, and Anthony Goose Edwards, and Clancy Kurgan Brown. So, RMJ Movie